Hello, Penny here. Today on my garden podcast, Joey, go away. Get off the top of that. Squashing the dahlia. I look round it, I look underneath it, I look at the back of it, thinking, is this for us? We just make stuff up as we go along, don't we? And that is why the hydrangea didn't go in the ground that night. I'm noticing a pattern. Saturday nights tend to be gardening nights. No, not date nights anymore, gardening nights. And this job in particular has turned out to be a little bit more complicated than I had first anticipated. The task of removing the salvia, referencing episode 4, series 1, about 4 years ago now. The salvia that we put in the ground has been doing lovely things every year, but this year there was a problem. And the problem was that it wasn't really flowering, a lot of twiggy, woody elements to it, and it had been taken over by ground elder. Ground elder, not a problem in the UK. It's not a invasive species as it is in other countries, but it is a bit of a pain because it does kind of swamp your salvia. So we don't want that. We don't want a swamped salvia, which is looking all a bit tatty, at the back of this bed. So Hunky Husband has dug out a large root ball around the salvia to incorporate all of the ground elder roots as well. Now, ground elder's a bugger. If you ever come across it, it is pesky and cheeky if you want to get rid of it. So if you pluck at it and go, oh, that's a weed, I'll just pull it out, it will snap. It will go, yeah, sure, you take me. You take my leaves and you take this little bit of stalk and you're going to feel like a winner, but I'm going to have the upper hand because I've got my roots deep down in the soil and I'm just going to spring right back again any moment now. So you've got to really think about the root system with getting this out. So we've done that to our best knowledge. That obviously there might be some ground elder lurking underneath, like in Stranger Things. So at the moment what we're looking at is a big patch of brown soil. It's very dry. I don't know why it's so dry. It's been raining for a lot over the last week or so, which is really ace for the garden. It was getting a bit much, the kind of dry weather. But what I'm going to put in its place is another thing I've been feeling guilty about, which is a hydrangea that's been pot bound. It's been dried out. It's been sitting in a tub of water for a week. Now, the reason it's been sitting in a tub of water for a week is because I thought I'll pop it in this tub of water for the next hour or so before I put it in the ground. And then a week went by. Oh well, you get distracted quite easily. Now, the nice thing about leaving it, and it's an accidental benefit really, sitting in water for a week, started flowering. So it's looking absolutely lovely. But the reason I got distracted, and maybe you'll resonate with this, I don't know, but I took it out of its pot last Saturday afternoon. I thought, right, I'll just bung it in this water and in a couple of hours I'll come back to the situation and I'll put it in the ground. Happy days, all done. In that couple of hours, Hunky Husband and I went to the tip. Now, we call it a tip, but actually it's a recycling centre. Now, the guy at the tip will always tell you that, and you go, oh, it's brilliant. I didn't realise the tip is still open. That's amazing. You go, recycling centre. And then it's brilliant because on the billboard on the way in, it tells you how much the local area has recycled and how much this recycling centre has recycled. So we drive up to the recycling centre. Joyfully, it's quiet. We get a bay. We park up in front of the big iron tankers that are in the ground, and you have to lob your stuff in, and it's got different sections. It's got wood, metal, household, electrical, you know the deal. You've got your car open at the back. There are other smug people there as well. It's like, yeah, this is the last bit of the day before I can sink a glass of wine on the veranda or the patio or the balcony, because I've done the grafter day and I'm about to empty my car of all the shit I don't need into these big bins. And then we see on top of just domestic waste. It's not even got a specialist section. Rattan furniture. So we're looking at this bin, this household waste bin where you put things that cannot be recycled. And we're looking at these bits of furniture poking out the top at eye level. Thinking, is this for us? So I'm there, in my mind, thinking, where will it go? Will it fit in? Does the colour suit what I've got in mind? The patio, the plants? Is it lifestyle enough, you know? And the guy comes along from the recycling centre, the guy who will tell you it's not a tip, it's a recycling centre, and he starts fishing it out because he too has recognised it's one of those items that you'd put on the grass verge for future customers to come along and take and scoop up and reuse. And I'm going, oh, brilliant, mate. Would you mind just digging out that footstool as well? And that one over there, brilliant. Can you reach that cushion? Wonderful. He gets it out. I think, wow, this stuff is in really good nick. I look round it, I look underneath it, I look at the back of it. It works. There's nothing wrong with it. So I say to Hunky Husband, do you know what? We don't need a whole set. We'll just take one, you know, just for the patio area just outside the back door. Or maybe two. Now, he's not a stupid man, my husband. He's very clever. Why just take two when you could take the whole set? All 4 chairs, all 4 footstools, because they tuck away underneath. And before you know it, we're back home, having strapped them on the roof, and in a moment of time, we are sitting on the patio in our new rattan furniture, drinking wine, feeling smug, looking at ourselves and congratulating ourselves for a freebie of such high quality. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the hydrangea didn't go in the ground that night. Can't go wrong with a bit of rattan. Anyway, not sponsored. I know we had rattandirect.co.uk a few months ago sponsoring the podcast. This is not a sponsor. In fact, I'd just say go to your recycling centre and see what rattan comes up out of the tip. So it is really now time, 7 days late, but nonetheless, the hydrangea is going in the ground this evening. Let's get on with the job in hand. I'm going to go off mic now while I do the boring work of digging a hole, and I'll come back in a tick. Right, I've dug the hole and I've also put in some fertiliser in the bottom because it's very dry around here. Now I'm going to have to step over what has become a bit of a dahlia bottleneck, shall we say. I put the dahlia in the ground. They're from seed, very impressive, super. There's yellow, pink, white, purple, and another yellow one. And of course, guess what? I underestimated how beefy they'd grow and how bushy they'd grow. So they're all a bit kind of clumped together. That's okay because I know that at the end of the season, I'll need to dig them out and put them in the greenhouse over the winter. I believe it's called overwintering. Do you know what? There's a lot of lingo, isn't there? I've always mentioned this and I still haven't quite got to grips with it. And maybe every now and again I'll say something like loam just because I'm thrilled that I've remembered the word. So I've got to step over that with what is quite a heavy root ball. And let's just see. Yeah, okay. Let's get that water off. And then I'm going to step over. And hopefully the hole is the right size. Do you know what? It's a little low. But I'm not going to bother because I'm not going to worry about it. Because actually I think if it is low, the water doesn't drain off the bed as quickly as it might do off other plants that are a bit more proud in the bed. And as it's a hydrangea, hydra needs the water, doesn't it? So we'll go with that theory. We just make stuff up as we go along, don't we? So let's slide all that in. Big mud pile on the side, really dry soil. Do you know what? I can only apologise, hydrangea, for the neglect and abandonment that you have experienced over recent months. I've got a track record of being particularly good with hydrangea as well. It was one of my first favourite plants in my London flat when I didn't really have much of a garden. And because they're so reliable, aren't they? They're always going to come back. You don't really have to do too much to them. You don't have to worry about them. And they're always going to provide lovely blooms and also lovely dried blooms further down the season. But I think there was a couple of years ago when the weather wasn't that wasn't that good for hydrangea, and I noticed a lot of other ones around the neighbourhood that weren't actually flowering and stuff. So it was one of the first plants I learnt about as well, in terms of how to look after it beyond the season, so not to deadhead it before sort of January, February, and it was ready to do its new thing in the spring, because the dead heads on it, the dried hydrangea flowers, which are so lovely, actually protect the stalks, the new growth, from frost and damage. So what my instinct was to tidy up and cut it back and deadhead it, like you might do with other plants. Joey, go away, get off the squashing the dahlia. It's the last thing they need under my care. It's dog prints. Right, so I'm just stamping them down. So yeah, it was one of the first plants I actually learnt about. So I've got a bit of a fond attachment. That and geraniums, kind of into those, just because they're old friends, you know. You got that with your own plants, haven't you? You've got your old friends. Now then, that is looking pretty. Hopefully, what I'm hoping it'll do is become a really humongous plant. I've got a nice, oh God, imagine being prepared. Wow, I am. Watering can of water. I'm going to absolutely drench this bugger. Absolutely give it all it needs. Settle that soil down. Just walked around it in a circle, pressing down the soil. And yeah, this is nice. It's puddling nicely. So it will give it what it's needs. The water's not draining off. I'm very pleased with that. Right, we'll see how that does. Fingers crossed, everyone. And I think all of that effort deserves a nice glass of wine on the rattan furniture from the recycling centre.